how do we overcome the problem of Islamophobia, or people who are spreading hatred against Islam and Muslims actively in Europe? What do we do about them? Living in Europe, we can do things in a very intelligent fashion and overcome our troubles. I have few ideas in front of me which I will share with you very quickly, and I'll try my best to give you as much Islamic support as possible for my arguments and my ideas. We should not be those pimping women for prostitution. We should not be those who are causing problems in the society. To the contrary, we should be the ones solving the problems of the society, so that no one can point a finger at you and say, these people are a social menace. So I talked about politics, I talked about education. Now I want to talk about social work. How the Muslims can leave a good legacy behind. Let me quickly make my point very clear. Compassion is never forgotten. Compassion never dies. It never dies. Let me give you examples. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi as-sami' al-alim min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alameen. Respected brothers and sisters, it is a privilege to be in Norway once again. I don't know when I came the last time. It was a while back. Since then, a lot has changed globally and even personally for myself. I was requested to come and deliver a lecture in front of the Muslim youth today. And I'm sure you have listened to the ulama, to the shuyukh who have given some iman boosting lectures. They must have shared some very important information with you that helped you understand Islam better. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to talk about practical issues we face living in the West. You, the Norwegian Muslims, in particular, and Muslims living in Europe in general, need to listen to this advice very carefully, which I will share with you in due course. We as Muslims should not shy away from the reality. Things are changing for us in Europe. A lot of us came here, or our elders, our parents, they came here to make a good living, which they have, thankfully. These lands gave refuge to many Muslims from around the world, from different backgrounds. These lands are very tolerant. Norway, Sweden, Britain in particular, France, I'm not too sure. Germany, things are changing. Other lands, some people are making openly Islamophobic statements. Openly. Politicians, leaders of countries are openly making anti-Islam statements. What do we do in this situation? How do we overcome the problem of Islamophobia, or people who are spreading hatred against Islam and Muslims actively in Europe? What do we do about them? Living in Europe, we can do things in a very intelligent fashion and overcome our troubles. I have few ideas in front of me which I will share with you very quickly, and I'll try my best to give you as much Islamic support as possible for my arguments and my ideas. Some of the challenges we are facing in Europe in general, and possibly in Norway in particular, are the issues to do with politics. Then education. Then our coordination as the Muslim community in between ourselves. Then the issue of social work. The issue of compassion. Showing the true face of Islam. So these are some of the ideas I will discuss. I will talk about politics, why the Muslims should indulge in politics. And I will explain what I mean by that in due course, inshallah. Also, why the Muslims must educate themselves. That will be number 2. Number 3 will be media. What do we do about the media as Muslims? Number 3 will be coordination. How do we coordinate with each other as a community? Number 5, I will talk about social work. Social work, whether the Muslims should get involved in social work or not. And then finally, our manners, our akhlaq. As Muslims living in these lands, how should we behave ourselves? Because your aunt, are you listening to me carefully? Yes. Your aunt will always look like an elephant on the media, right or wrong? Yes? You kill an ant, on the media it will be said they killed an elephant. Right? Yes? It will always be magnified. Your little mistakes, your little errors will be magnified. This is exactly what's happening. This is a reality. You know, in Britain, because I come from London, so I can specifically talk about the situation there. Some newspapers, they specifically put the word Muslim in the headline. So if someone with a Muslim name does something stupid, you will see the word Muslim in the headline. Muslim does X, Y, and Z. A Muslim did this. A Muslim woman did that. And when you look at the woman, she doesn't even look like a Muslim, right? Just because she has a Muslim name. On the other hand, when someone from the Christian background or from the white racial background does something like that, the ethnicity is not mentioned and the religion is not mentioned. Only the Muslims are given that specific attention. So what do we do with these problems? So the first point I want to talk about is politics. Why is it important for the Muslims to get involved in politics? However you want to do it. You understand your situation in Norway better than I. I don't live in Norway. You do. You know how politics works here. You have scholars here to guide you. And I'm not asking you to indulge in haram. Al-haramu bayyin wal-halalu bayyin. We know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Haram is clear and halal is clear. Between them are doubtful matters. Avoid them. I am asking you to indulge in politics in the halal way. Something which is absolutely halal. Because what happens a lot of the times when we talk about something, our minds are so negative that we jump straight to the haram. Oh, it's haram, haram. The first thing we think of is haram. We can't do it. No. What about the halal options? Allah has given us halal options. Why don't we think positively? How can we do things the halal way? That is an option for us. So let's work on that. So politics is very important because this is where you will be represented on the national scale. I'll give you a few examples very quickly. From the life of the Prophet ﷺ. When the hijrah of Habasha, to Abyssinia, some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ in the year 5 Nabawi, not Hijri, in the year 5 Nabawi, a hijrah took place to Abyssinia. What happened? Some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they went to this king called Najashi, Negos, right? The Prophet ﷺ told them, go to this land, you will not be wronged. You will not be oppressed. This king is a good king. Even though he's a Christian king, he's a good king. And it rings a bell for us today, right? Certain countries, situation is very good. I was recently in Ireland. I delivered the same lecture there. And I looked at the situation of the Muslims. They live happily. And I ask them to preserve this situation for yourselves. Don't make it worse for yourselves by your language, by your behavior, by your demeanor. Rather, play positively. Do something for the people. Like, for example, and I'll come to make this point later on, the issue of compassion. Leaving a good memory behind, a good legacy, something your children, your future generations can be proud of. Like we are proud of certain things our predecessors did. When we look at the history of our predecessors, the Salaf, people who did great things, our poets, our scientists, people who upheld the Islamic civilization, which stretched from Spain to China. Was it a joke? Universities, hospitals, paved roads, street lights, libraries, where people could simply walk in and pick up the books and read and study under the guidance of Muslim scholars all over the planet. This is what we call the Islamic civilization. What's happening today is that people are deliberately equating Islam with ISIS. ISIS is exactly Islam. You must have come across that on mainstream channels. People say ISIS equals Islam. Islam, this is what it looks like. No. We say no, that's not true. Islam's history does not begin with the war of Iraq. Islam's history does not begin in the year 2003 when Iraq was invaded. It doesn't begin in the 1990s when the first Gulf War took place. Rather, our history begins with the revelation of the Quran. So what happened in between from the time of the Prophet ﷺ to the year 1990 when all these problems in the Middle East started to kick in? What about that period? 14 centuries of Islamic civilization, our libraries, our scholars, our theologians, our poets, our scientists, our universities, the Library of Baghdad, the Library of Granada, the Library of Delhi in India. There were so many Muslim dynasties, the Ottomans, Allahu Akbar. What happened to all these people? All the contributions they made to human development. What happened has Islam nothing to do with that? That you jump straight from the Prophet ﷺ to al-Baghdadi in the year 2017. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment? So if you don't learn about your history, about your civilization, about what your predecessors did for you, you will start to believe this rhetoric, this propaganda. Because you're young, you've never seriously studied the history of Islam and the great things Muslims achieved in the past, you will think maybe this is true. Maybe what the Prophet ﷺ taught is being exactly practiced by these people who are doing catastrophes in the name of Islam. But it is not true. We have great people, great institutions, great achievements in our history. And I don't want to talk about that. That's a topic in itself. The magnificence of Islamic civilization, the art of Islam, the expression of Islam. How did it happen? I call it the golden chain of events. This is what I call it, to put it in simple terms. This is what happened in civilization, or Islamic civilization. The revelation of the Quran is the first event. The first thing that occurred. This is when the history of our civilization begins. We represent, you, all of you, represent a civilization, whether you know it or not. If you don't know it, you need to learn about it. And let me explain what it stands for. The Quran, the first thing that came to the Prophet ﷺ. Lo and behold, the first revelation in the cave of Hira upon a man who has never been to a school or to an academy. And amazingly, this was foretold centuries before he was born. If you go to the Bible, we read verses, for example, in the book of Isaiah, as the Bible stands today, the book of Isaiah, chapter 29, verse 12. Chapter 29, verse 12, it states, and I quote, listen carefully. When the book is given to the one who is not learned, who is unlettered, ummi, And it is said to him, read. I'm quoting the Bible, the book of Isaiah chapter 29 verse 12. And the oldest manuscript of this particular book was written 5 centuries before the Prophet of Islam was born. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Thank you. When the book is given to the one who is not learned and it is said to him, read, he will say, I am not learned. I am not learned. Now go to Kitab al-Wahi in Sahih al-Bukhari. How did the Wahi come upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? The hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that the angel appeared to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and he said, read, Iqra. To who? To the Ummi. The Prophet who is Ummi, unlettered. And he said, Ma ana biqari'in. I am not learned. I cannot read. Allahu Akbar. Word by word fulfilled. A prophecy which was put in the previous scriptures. This is why the Quran makes the claim in chapter 7, verse 157, Surah Al-A'raf, verse 157. يَجِدُونَهُ مَكْتُوبًا عِنْدَهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ. They find him mentioned with them in the Torah and the Injil. These people, the Jewish people and the Christians, know him. يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. They know him as they know their sons. Who? The Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They know him. So this is when the civilization of Islam begins. The first revelation, the first command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iqra, read. This is your power. Read knowledge. Read in the name of Allah. Read. The one who created you. Read. Seek knowledge. It will make you powerful. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is shocked. He's shocked. He doesn't understand what this means. He runs to his wife. Zammiluni, zammiluni, laqad khashitu ala nafsi. I fear for my life. I don't know what this means. And she tells him, Wallahi, kalla wallahi la yukhzika Allahu abada. Allah will not harm you. Why? Innaka latasil al-rahima wa taksib al-ma'duma wa taqri al-dayfa wa tu'inu ala nawa'ib al-haqq. You are a good man. You are a good person. You support the poor, the oppressed. You honor your guests. You stand with the truth. You're not a person Allah will wrong. You are a good man. And then she takes him to Waraka bin Nawfal. Waraka tells him, هَذَا النَّامُوسُ الَّذِي نَزَّلَ اللَّهُ عَلَى Musa. This is the same angel who came upon Musa. يَا لَيْتَنِي أَنْ أَكُونَ حَيًّا إِذْ يُخْرِجُكَ قَوْمُكَ. I wish I will be alive on the day when your people will kick you out. They will drive you out. And the Prophet is shocked. Why will they drive me out? So Waraka is telling him the entire story in one sitting. You are a prophet of Allah. The same angel came upon you because Waraka has read the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians. He knows what is there. And the story corresponds to what is already stated in the book of Isaiah chapter 29:12. So Waraka tells him, this is going to happen to you now. Waraka dies soon after. And scholars of Islam state that Waraka became a Muslim before the Prophet even preached to him. He knew the Prophet ﷺ is a prophet even before the Prophet ﷺ knew he was a prophet. Allahu Akbar. So this is when the civilization of Islam begins. Iqra, read, and then revelations of the Quran come down. So the first chain or the first event in the golden chain of events is the Quran. From the Quran comes the concept of justice. Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 8. O who you believe, stand firmly. Kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada bil qist. Stand firmly for justice. Even if you dislike the other, do justice. Huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa. It is closer to God consciousness. And then Muslims started to do justice because of that. And from that justice came peace. You cannot have peace without justice. Is that true? Yes? You can never have peace without justice. So because the Quran came, from Quran came a concept of justice which the companions of the Prophet ﷺ adopted. They applied it socially. Then came what? Peace. Aman. Peace. A peace that the Jews and the Christians testified to its effectiveness. Christians were writing that we have never seen peace like this in the time of Muawiyah radiallahu an. A Christian called John Bar Pinkaye, writing in Damascus, he wrote that there is so much peace in the world that we have never seen anything like it. Then we have Jewish rabbis writing in the 11th century in Cordoba, that our living standard is better than the Muslims because of their justice, because of their sense of justice. And from this peace came progress. So there is a golden chain of events. The Quran, number 1. Justice, number 2. Number 3, peace. Number 4, progress. And then from this peace came all our libraries, all our poets, all our scholars, all our theologians, all our philosophers, you name it. The Islamic civilization stands for this. This is the story of Islamic civilization cut short. The water in Norway is very nice. MashaAllah. So, this was what Islam stood for. It stands for that today. We represent a civilization. We are not destroyers. We are builders. We are constructors. We are sustainers of peace and justice. We don't work the opposite way. So this is why it is very important for you to understand what Islamic civilization is. Our history is not 20 years old. It is not 30 years old. It is 14 centuries old. You must consider, before you jump to what's happening today, which is quite geopolitical in nature, start with the Prophet ﷺ and see what Islam did to nations and people, how it changed them. And this is where my point comes when it comes to politics. When the Hijrah of Habasha took place, what happened? The Muslims went there. They went to a foreign land. They went to an alien land where people did not know this new faith. Although it wasn't new, but to them it was new. So the Qurayshis went to get them back. Okay, we want to take these fugitives back. They have run away. We want to take them back so that we can put them where they belong. Right? So what happens? The Muslims choose a leader. Who is that? Who is going to help me? Who was that? Who spoke for the Muslims? Who spoke for the Muslims? Put your hands up. One person. Who else knows? 2 people. Who knows who spoke for the Muslims? Put your hands up. Okay, put your hand down. How many of you know who Tom Cruise is? Put your hand up. Come on, don't lie to me. I know you all know Tom Cruise. Shah Rukh Khan? Put your hands up. Don't be shy. Allahu Akbar. I'm not going to put you on the spot. I know him. I put both my hands up. Huh? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is it. This is our problem. This is our problem. We know people we don't need to know. And we don't know people we need to know. Right? Do you agree? It was Ja'far bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu who represented the Muslims in front of Najashi. So what happened? He came forward and he fought for the Muslims. Verbally, he stood up for the Muslims. He represented the Muslims. He said, we are an oppressed people. Why? Because we believed in a man who came from an honorable family, a truthful man who told us to worship one God, do charity, and pray 5 times a day. And we were a people who used to worship idols. We used to eat dead meat. We used to kill each other. We had no rules and regulations. But when we became good, these people became our enemies. Is there anything wrong with that, O king? The king said, there's nothing wrong with what you believe in. You may live in my land for as long as you like. I will not give you away even for a mountain of gold. Allahu Akbar. So why did the Prophet ﷺ send them there? Because he knew that Najashi is not going to do injustice. But Ja'far had to stand up. Are you listening, everyone? Yes. Ja'far had to speak. He had to represent his people intelligently, eloquently. In fact, some people believe it is one of the most eloquent speeches delivered in the history of humanity. Some speeches, they're never forgotten historically. Like Martin Luther King, his I Have a Dream speech in Washington, right? It will never be forgotten. Some of the speeches of Malcolm X will never be forgotten, right? Other people delivered amazing speeches in our history, and they will not, Ja'far's speech will not be forgotten. It is documented by Ibn Hisham in his seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was political representation on the part of the Muslims. Ja'far stood up to defend the Muslims politically. This was a political statement. He stood up. Likewise, my brothers and sisters, if you don't do it today, don't get involved, you will be misrepresented or you will be underrepresented. Right? Do you agree? Do you agree? If there is no one to speak for you in the highest of circles in this country, you will always be mistreated because of misunderstandings. People will simply misunderstand your legacy, your history, your civilization. They don't know who you are, what you stand for, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, what your ambitions are in this country. You will be misrepresented unless you have people who can speak for you, and preferably people from these lands. Train them, educate them in politics. Okay? Sitting in a madrasa, memorizing the Quran, reading Bukhari with the sharh of Ibn al-Hajar al-Asqalani, and Sahih Muslim with Imam al-Nawawi's sharh. All of these things are important. When will you apply them socially is the question. Knowledge is information until it is applied. This is why Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah rahmatullah alayhi said, al-ilm huwa al-amal. Knowledge is action. It is not information, because shaitan has more knowledge than all of you put together. Do you agree? Do you agree? Yes. Shaitan knows things you don't know. Trust me. Who taught the use of Ayatul Kursi? Who taught the use of Ayatul Kursi? Shaitan. Even though he's a liar. The Prophet ﷺ said he is a liar, but this time he spoke the truth. This Ayatul Kursi is protection. He knows things you don't know, right? But it is only information for him because he doesn't apply it. He failed to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So information is very important. But when it's applied, it becomes real. It becomes real. It starts to change societies. So political representation is very important. Another example I want to give you. When you don't have political representation, what happens? Because I come from the Pakistani subcontinent. I'll give you a short history lesson to understand the importance of political involvement, whether it is big or small. All of you people sitting in front of me right now, don't think I'm too little. I'm only a boy. I'm only a girl. I'm only one person. I can't do that. No, this is when shaitan starts to put you down. Every one of you is significant. Every one of you is important. Every one of you is an individual. Every one of you can be an ummah within yourselves. You can do a lot. You can do a lot. You start to think big, you will start to achieve big. You think little, you will achieve little. If you think 10%, you will achieve 1%. If you think 100%, you will achieve 10%. At least 10%. So most people who became leaders in our history, most people who succeeded in what they did was because of their thinking. I'll give you an example, maybe not an appropriate example, but it is an example. Alexander the Third, also known as Alexander the Great, Alexander of Macedonia. Where was he from? Put your hands up. All the fans of Shah Rukh Khan, put your hands up. This is what I'm going to use against you now. Right? Who else? Who's popular here in Norway? What music do they listen to? Because when I used to listen to music, those people are gone, dead and buried. I think most of them are dead. This was in like maybe 20 years ago. Allahu Akbar. Huh? There are new creatures out nowadays. Huh? New creatures with new music. Right? So this information is very important. Alexander, where was he from? Who's going to tell me? Scottish. Someone said Scottish. Subhanallah. Macedonia, which is very close to Greece. And how far did he go? Anyone? How many of you from Pakistan here? Put your hands up. Pakistan. Pakistan, Pakistan. Put your hands up. Very few Pakistanis, huh? Okay. Anyone from Jhelum? Jhelum. A city called Jhelum. Okay, there's one hand in the back. Jhelum. You know, there's a city called Jhelum in Pakistan. It's in Punjab. Alexander had the bloodiest battle of his career in this place against one of the Indian kings called Porus. Right? Alexander lost more men in this battle than in any other battle. So where is Macedonia and where is Pakistan? Just go and look at the map and you will see how large this territory is. How can someone humanly possibly do that in the 4th century BC? He did it. And when he started, he was 20 years old. How old? He was 20. And he died when he was 33. Died a very young man. Within 13 years, he had done something no one could imagine in human history. You know why? Because of this. Thinking, brain. He wanted to get out. He wanted to do great things. And he did whatever he did. Whether those things were great morally or not is another question. He achieved what he was out to achieve. Did he die a happy man? I don't know. I'm giving you an example because he thought big. He did big things. And that's why he's remembered. Very few people know his father or people who came after him. But everyone who studies history knows him. Why? He did something very, very big, right? So the point is, when you start to think big, big things will happen. Likewise, I wanted to give you an example of importance of getting involved in politics. The reason why I'm spending more time on this point is because this is very important. Are you getting bored? Are you sure? Yes. I'm getting tired. It's not easy to speak, you know, seriously, subhanAllah. But I have Norwegian water in front of me, so inshallah I'll be okay. So, what happened in Pakistan or India? The British, they were governing India. They started to take land slowly. The process began in 1757. The year 1757, the British started to accumulate land in India beyond their dreams. They couldn't even dream in the wildest of dreams. The British could not imagine that they will have once India in their possession because it was the richest country in the world. India, in the time of a Mughal king, the most Islamic Mughal king, Aurangzeb, Alamgir, rahmatullah alayhi. Those of you who are students of knowledge would know a book, a collection of fatwa called Al-Fatawa Al-Hindiya, also known as Fatawa Alamgiri. Do you know about it? Okay, Fatawa Alamgiri was compiled on the behest of the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb Alamgir. So it is named after him, Fatawa Alamgiriya. Okay, it is the largest collection of fatwa of the Hanafi fiqh. We have 4 schools of thought, right? Main 4 schools of thought in Islamic history. We have the Hanbalis. Hanbalis have Al-Mughni, right? To refer to Al-Mughni, Ibn Qudama Al-Maqdisi, right? The Malikis have At-Tamheed, you know, a commentary on Muwatta of Imam Malik. And the Hanafis, the largest collection of fatwa is Fatawa Al-Hindiya, also known as Fatawa Alamgiri. In his time, he governed from the year 1658 to 1707. That's when he died. In his time, the GDP of India was 24% of the world. In other words, 24% of the world's wealth was in India. This is how rich India was. So the British could not imagine taking all that land. They took it slowly and steadily. It took them a century. Finally, they occupied all of India. The independence movement starts. The Second World War comes in. Hitler starts to bomb London. So the Indians, they escalate the process, right? So there is Muslim League and there is Congress, which is mainly represented by the Hindus. So the Muslim leaders now know, because they are a minority in India, if democracy is strictly applied, what's going to happen? The majority gets the rule. Who's the majority in India? Hindus, right? So if majority, which the British, if they left, they will leave democracy behind. What's going to happen? Because of democracy, Muslims will not get the lead. They are not in the majority. Muslims have never been in the majority. They have governed India for almost 7 centuries, but they've never been the majority. Muslims have always been in a minority in India, but they were effective governors, effective rulers, effective administrators. They were able to govern because Muslims are brave. Put it this way. I mean, this is a fact, historical fact, right? But if democracy is left behind, so the Muslim leaders, they started to demand a separate homeland called Pakistan. India is for the Hindus, Pakistan is for the Muslims. Now, how did Pakistan come about? By effective political representation. Now, there is another third religion in India, a big one. Which one is that? Sikhs. Right? Sikh. You know the people who wear turbans? The Sikhs? You know, people who... Have you ever seen a Sikh in your life? I'm sure there are Sikhs in Norway, right? Because there is a joke in Pakistan that there are 2 things you will find everywhere in the world: water and Sikhs. Because Sikhs are very hard-working people. They are very hard-working people. You will find them all over the planet, working very hard, right? But they didn't get a separate homeland. You know why? Because they didn't have effective leadership. There was no one there to argue their case. Muslims had people like Iqbal, Jannah, and other people, very effectively shrewd, trained solicitors, barristers, trained people, educated people in the West, in Britain, in Oxford and Cambridge. They went back and they represented the case of the Muslims. So Muslims were able to fight their case effectively, right? And the reason why, unfortunately, ulama, the scholars, couldn't fight the case because they could not speak the language of power. It is very important for you to understand this fact. The ulama are very important in our societies. But gone are the days of Ibn Taymiyyah, unfortunately. We do not have those scholars anymore. They don't, because Ibn Taymiyyah, why was Ibn Taymiyyah so special? Rahmatullah alayhi, Shaykh al-Islam. Why was he so special? Because he spoke the language of power. He spoke to the kings. And when he spoke to the kings, they sat down in front of him because he was more trained, more shrewd, more knowledgeable than all of them put together. And he was brave. Allahu Akbar, he was brave. So he represented his people, right? But unfortunately, the ulama were not given that importance at that time. So these barristers and lawyers had to do the job. So we need the ulama to come forward and speak the language of power today. So this is why the Muslims were able to do what they did. Allahu Akbar. They were able to have this separate homeland for the Muslims. And now what's happening in India, you can see the beef ban on adhan in certain places. You cannot get married Islamically. There are people who are being, killed. One of the biggest states in India, Uttar Pradesh, the person who has been made the chief minister there is an open Islam hater, someone who has been delivering speeches against Islam and Muslims. In fact, in one of the speeches, he was present when the suggestion was made that Muslim women should be taken out of graves and raped. Muslim women should be taken out of their graves and they should be raped. It was made, this statement was made in front of him when he was sitting there. He is now the chief minister of the biggest state in India called Uttar Pradesh. This is the situation in India. This is what the Muslim leaders could foresee. They could see this will happen in the future. If the Muslims are not given a separate homeland, they may well lose any sense of honor and dignity. For that reason, they fought politically. So political representation, my brothers and sisters, is an idea which we have neglected for very long. Norway is your land. It is your country. You were born here. You have contributed to this land. It is your job to get involved and speak to the politicians there. Speak to the Prime Minister. Speak to the police. Speak to the administration. Explain the beauty of Islam to them. If you're not there to talk to them, how will they know your case? How will they understand you? How will they even help you if you're not there? You are a minority, right? You are a minority. If you're not there talking to them, explaining to them, then how will they help you? How will you survive? It's very important. How you do it is entirely up to you. There are ulama guiding you. Next point I want to talk about is education. Education. Why have the Muslims neglected education? One of the reasons or one of the evidences of lack of education among us is the very examples I gave earlier, that we know little about our own legacy, our own history, our own people, our own heroes, right? We know more about Superman, Spider-Man, Chili Man, Powder Man, whatever, other men and women, all of that, all the cartoons. You speak to your kids, they will know Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, or Donald Trump, yeah, whoever, all these people. Your children will know these names, Hollywood, Bollywood names, right? Because that's what we love. Truly, this is what we look up to. We may claim to love Islam and Islamic history, Islamic civilization, Islamic legacy, but in reality, our children know these people more than they know about Islam. Because when we are sitting around the dinner table, we're not telling our children about people like Ibn Taymiyyah, people like Shah Waliullah, people like Imam Ahmed, people like Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhim, people like great civilization, our libraries, our universities, what I talked about earlier. And there are books upon books written by scholars, academics, as to how Muslims were central. They were at the core of European intellectual development. Western Europe, where you are right now, did you know these are the lands of Vikings, right? Hello? Any Vikings here? Definitely the descendants of Vikings are here, no doubt, I'm sure. And Vikings are sometimes given a very bad, image in history, in media. Even when the movies are made, they are shown to be barbarians. But they were not that bad when you study. They were effective business people. How do we know this? In these lands, in Norway and Sweden, they have found Islamic coins. Who knows about this? Right. Where did these coins come from? Silver, hoards, big collections, like big, amount and quantity of Islamic dirhams from the Abbasid period, from the period of Banu Abbas, coins belonging to Harun al-Rashid's period, Al-Mahdi, or Al-Ma'mun, or Al-Mu'tasim Billah, or Muqtadir, or later Khulafa of Banu Abbas. Coins belonging to them were found buried in Norway and Sweden. Some found near Stockholm. Where did they come from? Even East Anglia, even in England, East Anglia, where the Vikings were raiding the coast, they would go and bury these coins in the ground. How did these coins come here? Because they were doing business with the Muslims. They were dealing with Muslims, with the people. They were selling the fur. The Vikings, what did they have? Their commodity was fur. There were plenty of animals in these jungles, and they would get fur from them and they would sell to Muslims, and Muslims would give them dirahim, silver coins. They would bring them back and bury them here. So the point is, all of these things are important for us to know so that we can contextualize the history of Islam for the people of these lands. We can show them that Islam has had physical presence in these lands since the time of the Vikings. We didn't turn up here today. Our presence in physical form was here. Whether we were here ourselves or not is not the question here. But our influence was here. The first gold coin ever minted in England, for example, was done by an English king called Offa. It is in the British Museum today. Are you listening to me? The first gold coin ever minted by an English king. Romans were there in Britain. Right? The Celts were there. They had the currency. The Romans had their gold coins with Roman emperors and Roman deities on the coins. But the first time an English king, who are the English people? Anglo-Saxons. Where did they come from? Saxons came from Germany. Angles came from Scandinavia. Right? So these were two tribes who predominantly made what we know today as Anglo-Saxons. The native people of Britain were driven westwards. So they are today the Celts, the remnants of the children of Celts, people who are in Wales and Ireland. Irish and Welsh are actually the original people of Britain. People who came later on, who inhabited England or east side of the country, are Anglo-Saxons. The first coin ever minted by an Anglo-Saxon king or English king was minted in the 8th century because he governed from 756 to 796 CE. He was a contemporary of Harun al-Rashid. Okay? The first coin minted by him has the formula Muhammad Rasulullah on it. Allahu Akbar. The coin is there in the British Museum. It says in Latin, Offa Rex, King Offa. But what he did was he copied the Abbasid dinar, not knowing what it states. Because he was a Christian king, he didn't know what he was copying. He didn't understand the Arabic language. He copied the formula Muhammad Rasulullah exactly. So this is your homework. Google Offa's Islamic coin. Offa Islamic coin. You will see the pictures of the coin and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so the physical existence of Islam is very old in these lands. Through education, you can explain this to people here. You need to educate yourselves first. Okay, we have neglected our history, our fields. So who are the people teaching, and what is the importance of knowledge in Islam? Education. Education is the core of Islam. Without education, you cannot even understand the Quran, let alone the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. You cannot do anything without education. In fact, to the extent the Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith, he stated, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon all Muslims. Talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli Muslim. Okay, what does the Quran say? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hal yastawi alladhina ya'lamuna walladhina la ya'lamun. Are those who know not equal to those who know? It is impossible. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you here evidence that knowledgeable people are the most important people in a society. So education, what do you mean? What do I mean by education? Universities. How many of us are doing degrees, for example? Primarily, we need to learn Islam. If we don't know Islam, then there's no point of running like headless chickens anywhere else, right? If you don't know your own deen, if you don't know yourselves, why would you want to know something else, right? So learn who you are first. Learn the Quran with understanding. Even one verse a day. This is a practical step. Brothers, how many of you can read one verse a day of the Quran? Put your hands up. And the rest can't, right? I didn't see all your hands up. How many of you can read one verse of the Quran every day? I can't see your hands. Are your hands smaller? Let me see them, right? Every single one of you. Every single one of you. So can you promise from now on today that you will every single day, inshallah, read at least one verse of the Quran with meaning, with understanding every day? Can you do that? Inshallah, can you do your best to do that? And if you can't do that, then what can I do for you? There's nothing I can do for you. Because that's something. How long does that take? Literally less than 5 minutes, reading a Quranic verse in your own language, if you don't know the Arabic language, and reading its meaning, its understanding, in the light of the ulama's commentaries, right? So that will be a start, and then start building on that. And after that, my brothers and sisters, we need people among you to go and study law, go and study journalism, go and study politics, study history. And those who are well versed in Islamic Sharia, Islamic sciences, they should go and study Western philosophy so that you can do a comparison between our world. Like Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi, what did he do? He mastered Islam. He mastered Islam, and then he studied other sciences to deal with the questions and the contentions of other people. And education will do it. Let me explain very quickly before I move on to the next point. Who are the people teaching Islamic studies? No, before I do that, who are the people teaching Jewish studies in Western universities? And when I say Western universities, I mean universities of Australia, Canada, Britain, here, even in Norway. There are some great scholars here as well in universities who are teaching the Jewish studies. Who? The Jewish scholars themselves, the Jewish teachers. Jewish people have owned their sciences, their fields, and they are teaching them, right? Right? Who are teaching the New Testament studies, biblical studies? Who are teaching them? Who? The Christians predominantly. Predominantly Christians. Who is teaching Islamic studies in Western universities? Atheists, Christians, and Jewish scholars. Where are the Muslims? Where are the Muslims is the question. When will you step up and start going to universities and start teaching, not only learning, start teaching your own sciences? When will that happen? And that's when things will start to change, when you have intellectuals to represent you through education. So education is a must. It is a must. Okay, that's my time. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. Okay. Next point. So I talked about politics, I talked about education. Now I want to talk about social work. How the Muslims can leave a good legacy behind. Let me quickly make my point very clear. Compassion is never forgotten. Compassion never dies. It never dies. Let me give you examples. One of the examples I gave in Ireland, the Irish people are a very good people. They do not forget the evil that happened to them, and they do not forget the good that happened to them. Let me explain. In the 19th century, there was a potato famine in Ireland, and the British government deliberately withheld food from the Irish people, and they died in hundreds of thousands. Are you listening to me? Yes. They died in the hundreds of thousands. Who was the queen at the time? Queen Victoria. So what happened? The Ottoman Sultan in Turkey, he heard about it. So he decided to send 10,000 pounds, which was a lot of money, to the Irish people. Are you listening? Yes. 10,000 pounds to the Irish people. And then he received a message through the British ambassador in Constantinople that you should not send 10,000 because the Queen of England, Victoria, only sent 2,000. So it will be disrespectful. What you should do, you should send something less than that. So the Sultan, he made a public declaration that I will send 1,000. But he in reality sent more than that. What he did was he sent 6 ships full of food and provisions to Ireland. And that spot is to this day remembered by the Irish people. The Irish people to this day remember that gesture of kindness from the Turkish Sultan. They haven't forgotten it. Every single Irish person you will meet on the street, ask them about the potato famine and who helped you at that time. Even though the help was not big. It wasn't something big. It wasn't something huge. It was a small amount considering the magnitude of the problem. But the Irish people remember it to this day because kindness, generosity never dies. Social work is very important. Sultan Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, even in his times, when he let the Europeans go, after he took the city of Jerusalem, some of the Muslim soldiers, like the Shabab, the youngsters nowadays, we want revenge, yes, right? There were people like that in his army. They said, we want revenge, we want bloodbath. 90 years ago, they killed everyone in the city. Calm down. We are not like them. We are Muslims. We have been taught by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our ways are different. We are not the Crusaders. We don't do what they did. So what did he do? He freed thousands of people when he took the city of Jerusalem, and he gave them protection. Those of them who didn't have the money, he gave them money from his own treasury to transport them back to Europe, to France, to England, even in some cases here in these lands, Norway and Sweden as well. Some people were there from these lands, right? So what happened? What happened? Those people who came back to Europe, they came back and they said, the Muslim king, he's a very great man. Salahuddin was remembered not only at that time, even today, he's remembered for his mercy. He is singled out from Muslim kings because of his mercy, his compassion, his great deeds. So compassion and social work never dies. So what are the practical steps I want to share with you very quickly? Practical steps are that get involved in social work in Norway. I am sure there are problems in Norway. Okay? I don't know what the problems are. I'm sure there may be poverty in certain areas. There may be old people who need help. Sometimes it snows in Norway. You know what happened? What happened in Britain? some of the brothers, they did an experiment in London, in the UK. When it snowed heavily, some of these brothers, they took shovels and they went and cleaned people's driveways. Without telling them, they started to clean people's driveways. And a lot of people came out and said, wow, subhanAllah, look at these people. They don't even know us and they're cleaning our driveways. They're making way for us. And it came in the news that Muslims went around cleaning driveways. Allahu Akbar. So imagine the impression of Islam and Muslims, right? So where we are, we should not be those who are littering the streets. We should not be those who are putting graffiti on the walls. We should not be those selling drugs. We should not be those pimping women for prostitution. We should not be those who are causing problems in the society. To the contrary, we should be the ones solving the problems of the society, so that no one can point a finger at you and say, these people are a social menace, not a social solution. Rather, they are a problem, right? So social work can be done. You can do soup tables. Once a week, maybe you can feed the homeless. Do you have homeless in Norway? Yes? You can go and help them. When you want to give dawah, words are cheap. You know, when you stand on tables, on street corners, it is very important to give dawah, no doubt. But the best dawah is what? Action. Action. You know, smiling. Even smiling. Rasulullah said, smile is a sadaqah. لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا ولو أن تلقى أخاك بوجه طليق. Even meeting your brother with a smile is a good deed for the sake of Allah. Do not belittle it. Don't think it is small. So things like that, you know, helping someone cross the road, removing rubbish from the street. You know, for example, wallahi, once, you know, I happened to be in a place, and this is I did because of my habit. I made wudu in a place, and there was a lot of water on the floor. Of course, when you make wudu, you know, some brothers, when they make wudu, they give shower to everyone around them, right? Everyone has a shower. Yeah? Wudu has to be made with humility. I know my time is up, so I'm going to end very quickly, inshallah ta'ala. Right? I made wudu, there was water around, so I took some tissues and I cleaned it. And there was a non-Muslim standing and watching me do that. He came up to me and he said, Wallahi, you know, he didn't say Wallahi, of course, but he said, yeah, that's me, that's my spin. Wallahi, he said that. That's what I meant to say. He came to me, he said, you know what? I have never seen anyone do that. Why did you do that? You didn't have to do that. I said, it is my deen, my religion, Islam, that teaches me to do this. When I make a mess, I have to clean it so that others come and they don't feel bad about it. Simple. Only Allah knows what he went away with. At least he was thinking that these Muslims, they have some humanity, some compassion, some sense of cleanliness. You know, our legacy is that we have to be clean. We have to be the cleanest people on the planet. The reason why we are the way we are, if you go back to our countries, Pakistan, Egypt, or other countries, you see rubbish on the streets. And when the adhan happens, it's a very big problem. When the adhan happens, you see people going to the masajid, right? They are rushing to the masjid, right? But they will see rubbish on the street. They won't touch it. They won't do nothing to it. What's the point of praying? There are orphans begging on the street. People are running to the masjid and they say, Allahu Akbar. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُوعُ الْيَتِيمِ وَلَا يَحُدُّ وَلَا طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. They come out of the masjid. The orphans are begging. There are widows sitting there and they don't even look at them and walk past. What's the point of praying? What's the point of praying? You just read some verses in the Quran where Allah is telling you, people, wake up. Islam is not just rituals. It's not just this or this. It is not that, or putting ihram on you and going. It has a meaning. There's a reason why Allah is making you do these things. You are being conditioned. Allah is putting things in your mind. Why do you go for Hajj? Go and see. There are lessons in Hajj. There are lessons in fasting. There are lessons in Salah. If you don't take lessons, social. Allah wants to be social. Take lessons from your rituals and apply them socially. So find your way of making a social difference, inshallah ta'ala. Allah will help you. Finally, Coordination, we should coordinate with each other as Muslims. Based upon schools of thought, we should not break away from other Muslims. Rather, our behavior towards other Muslims should be a behavior of love and compassion, not repulsiveness. Sometimes brothers, they have only become Muslims for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or a year or 2 years, and they start to, they have a fatwa gun. You know what a fatwa gun looks like? It is invisible. It's a very dangerous gun, but it is invisible. It's called fatwa gun. Yeah? And that gun is lethal. 2 years this boy has been studying. He cannot read a hadith properly. And he goes, mubtadi', bid'ah. Okay, kafir. Right? He's not praying properly. Look. They start to pick faults in others. Right? This kills coordination among Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to unite. Not unite upon batil. But in these circumstances, the circumstances we are living in, we have to coordinate with each other with love and compassion. Muslims, put your minor differences aside. Discuss them when things are better for you. At the moment, things are not better for you. So when there are 4 brothers in a house and the house is under attack, imagine, just an example. 4 brothers in a house, the house is under attack. It is raining from the top, and someone's kicking the door, someone's trying to break the wall, and these 4 brothers are sitting and looking at each other, and they're saying, you know what, I don't like your color, the color of your trousers. I don't like your hairstyle. I don't like your teeth. You don't brush them properly. So the enemies, when they will come, they will, what, you bunch of fools, what are you doing? This is exactly how Muslims are today, unfortunately. Wallahi. Our fiqhi opinions are important, very important. Allahu Akbar, we have to study them, understand them. But there's a place and time to discuss them. Okay? Today we have bigger problems. Finally, our manners. I've already talked about it. When we live in a society, we have to observe our manners. If you are a Muslim, you're wearing hijab or beard, or you look like a Muslim, don't litter the streets. You should be looking positively. When people look at you, they should look at someone positive, someone good, not someone evil. They go on the news, they see a man, with a knife, and he's making a video, and he's trying, and then they come on the street and they see a Muslim who's spitting like that, right? Or someone who's throwing rubbish outside, and see these people, what we saw on the news is true, because these people are like that. So living in the West, in a non-Muslim society, you have to observe your manners. Thank you very much. Before he pulls out the fatwa gun on me, I have to move out. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta.